how can we expect other people to treat us well if we're not treating ourselves well? And we can be the example to show people what's okay and what's not okay.
No, I totally agree with that. And, part of the crab as well is this idea of like self-protection. If you think of like Cancer, for example, or Scorpio for that matter, they're both very like self-protective signs. Their gut instinct is to protect themselves and their soft, squishy body inside, right, before they let anybody else in, or they make sure that it is safe to do so. We tell people a lot about the way that we feel about ourselves that way. But I think there's also with this card a need to discern when it is time to open up and when it is time to kind of like withdraw into that protective shell as well.
Welcome to the GRACED podcast, a space for everyday magic for your everyday life. We do this through rituals, aligning yourself to your soul's purpose, and creating alchemy to heal our mind, body, and spirits so that you can bring in more love and joy, manifest your desires, and believe in your dreams. Listen and watch over at graceduong.com/podcast and on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, and all the places you can find me on social media. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome to the GRACED podcast, a space where we talk about everyday magic for your everyday life. Today's guest is Aubrey Houdeshell, a professional tarot reader, astrologer, and shadow worker through her business, Graveyard Roses. She is also the creator and writer of the Oracle of Pluto deck, which we'll talk more about in today's episode. We dive deep into the transformative power of Pluto, what it means in each house, and how you can use the power of Pluto in your own life. If you've ever wanted to create your own tarot or oracle deck, check out the Create Your Deck Club and join our membership with deck creators from all over the world. If you're curious or even hesitant about creating your own deck, the first step is to get started, and we can definitely help you on that path. And what better way than to surround yourself with other deck creators who are on the same creation process as you. You can check out more information about the Create Your Deck Club at cydc.mysticmondays.com. And we are doing a giveaway of Aubrey's deck, the Oracle of Pluto, on Instagram. So if you want a deck featuring the power of Pluto and how to incorporate shadow work into your daily life, check out the @grace.duong and @mysticmondays Instagrams for all the details. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Aubrey. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Grace. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. So I've got your deck, the Oracle of Pluto, and actually pulled a card for myself today. It's the Hermit Crab. We happen to be recording during Virgo season, and I'm really feeling this energy. Can you tell us more about the influence of Pluto and how we can use that in our lives?
Yeah, so Pluto is probably the planet I work with the most closely in my own astrological practice. It's a lifelong journey that we go on with Pluto, and it really represents this kind of deep karmic wound that we all possess, right? And ultimately what we are searching for in our Plutonian journey is empowerment. But it's this very like cyclical process that we go through when we're working with Pluto, where we kind of return to the same themes over and over, depending on wherever it is that Pluto like sits in your birth chart. And ideally what happens is that each time we kind of circle back to these same themes, we are peeling back a layer, and there's like this more beautiful, resplendent, empowered version of ourselves that emerges. And then of course we also have transiting Pluto in our charts, which like does various different things. And so we created this deck sort of in a very timely fashion where we're having this transition between Capricorn and Aquarius with Pluto, and it's kind of bouncing back and forth. And we're all going to begin sort of like a new collective journey over the next 20 years with Pluto in Aquarius. And ideally, we are using the Oracle of Pluto deck to engage in our own sort of process of shadow work, which is ultimately what Pluto sort of entails. And again, in order to find that empowerment and maybe also defining what that looks like for ourselves through that process.
Yeah. So would you say that it takes an entire Pluto's cycle to be, I suppose, reborn? Or is it like a yearly thing? Like, what does it look like to work with Pluto?
So everything about Pluto is very slow, right? In our own like natal charts, it is a lifelong journey that we embark upon when we speak about our like static Pluto placement. And then wherever we see the journey of Pluto, it's sort of like multifold, right? Like ultimately there is, for example, with Capricorn, where it's been in Capricorn for the past decade and a half, there's a journey that you have been going on for the past decade and a half that will sort of come to its peak or culmination or, ending once Pluto has left Capricorn for the final time. However, to think that we only go through one cycle during that time and kind of only do like one thing is not true, right? We kind of visit again. We're like visiting these themes over and over and over. So it becomes this thread that kind of gets woven in our lives throughout the entirety of that Plutonian cycle. And depending on placements you have in your chart or the different things that are transpiring, you could go through innumerable lives and deaths and rebirths, or maybe only go through a few of them, right? So it's kind of a subjective experience in that way, but definitely I think we go through Plutonian cycles all the time in our life.
Yeah. I'm sure we see that like collectively show up as well. And I find that when we're on the journey of healing and uncovering these wounds, when we revisit these wounds, I think a matter of telling if you have healed it is how you manage your reaction of whether it triggers you or not. So it doesn't ever actually go away. It's just like you noticing within yourself if you've changed towards what would normally trigger you externally.
I completely agree with that. Yes. Like that's perfectly put.
Yeah. So I have Pluto natally in my 6th house, and I feel like it's been a lifelong struggle for me to find the right routine or ritual. And that's why I'm like obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Everyday magic is like what I want to create for myself. And I'm always like looking for the perfect routine or whatever. And it's just, a constant falling away and coming back and falling away and coming into acceptance that like there is no perfect routine or ritual. So I'm wondering if you could walk us through, what Pluto means in each house and, how we can work with that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and actually, I love what you said about trying to find the perfect routine with your Pluto in the 6th house, because that's so what it's about, right? Is trying to find like the daily situation for yourself that really works for you. And also, I think acknowledging that as like you grow, evolve, and change, your definition of like what the daily routine is and what you need will also change. Absolutely. We can run through all of the houses very quickly. I could talk about this for 1,000 years, but I will try to keep it as succinct as humanly possible. So when we see Pluto in the 1st house, okay, the 1st house is the house of the self. It's where we're really looking at our identity. Every other house in the chart sort of deals with like everything and everyone else, where the 1st house is the only house that's just you. So people who have their Pluto in the 1st house, and also I will say any planets and points that we see in the 1st house are very like upfront for other people to see. We're sort of openly embodying the energy of those planets. And so sort of without fail, everybody that has their Pluto in the 1st house is very intense. And that's usually a word that gets used to describe them, maybe a word they use to describe themselves. That's because Pluto is intense, right? They may very much embody that kind of like obsessive nature of Pluto as well.
And definitely influenced by Scorpio too, right?
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Like you might even feel like Scorpio ascendant or something like that.
Yeah, totally. I think obviously all of us millennials that have our Pluto at home in Scorpio, we sort of have a very different experience with Pluto than everybody else that has it in like other signs. But no matter what, Pluto is always bringing that sort of like scorpionic like vibe to it, right? So yeah, even if somebody's like, oh, my Pluto is in Libra, and like a Libra ascendant is normally very like sweet and kind and charming and all of these things, they may come off much more Scorpio because of Pluto being there. But no matter what, these people that have a Pluto in the first house, their sense of self or identity is constantly in flux. They're constantly going through transformations around the self. Their identity and perhaps the way that they define themselves is like constantly shifting. You know, the things that they sort of go through usually kind of ends up changing who they are completely, right? And so it's not necessarily a static sense of the self. And ideally, again, we're becoming like more and more empowered and moving towards like greater and greater authenticity around like self-expression and identity. Also, this is probably somebody who's going to be private and kind of reserved, and they will have that certain like je ne sais quoi magnetism to them with a Pluto in the first house as well. Now, where we see Pluto in the second house, this is sort of an interesting placement because in the second house, we're really looking to establish our like self-esteem, right? The identity that we've taken from the first house, we're now moving into the second house and looking to kind of like solidify our confidence in who we are. And so this, unfortunately, can be somebody who really struggles to have self-esteem and to feel good about themselves. This is also a money house. So we're going to see somebody who very probably has gone through some extremes as far as like material safety, security, stability is concerned. There's a lot of different ways that this could manifest, but you know, we can see somebody who maybe has experienced extreme poverty in some way. We can see somebody who maybe has experienced like weird control, abuse, I don't know, right? Like with money, and maybe somebody has used money as a way to control them, for example. Again, I could talk about this for like 1,000 years, but ultimately, this is somebody who's looking to establish that like material safety and security for themselves, right? And they may go through their life feeling like money is this kind of constant struggle for them. And there's really a journey surrounding finding that kind of like empowerment around like materials. It's also the house of like our resources. So there is a need for this person to find trust perhaps in themselves and their own resourcefulness, and to trust themselves to be able to kind of like handle whatever the thing is, right? That they can draw upon their own like wealth of resources to successfully get through the situation. This is also a marker we see constantly in the charts of billionaires, which I think is an interesting anecdote for Pluto in the second house. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will become billionaires if we have this placement in the chart, but like I love to use Bill Gates as an example, right? Like he has Pluto in the second house, and Pluto is always operating on extremes, right? So we can go from like extreme poverty to extreme wealth, rags to riches, if you will. Okay, so now Pluto in the third house. This is somebody who ultimately is here to like clear their throat chakra and to really find empowerment in their voice. This is the house where we learn to speak up and to share what we think, what we feel, what we know. They may struggle with feeling like nobody actually like hears them, right? Nobody actually respects their opinions or thinks that they actually know what they're talking about. And they may sort of feel like they're like clawing their way to get people to really like respect them and understand them. So there is a journey around finding those people, of course, but there's also this journey of like empowerment of the voice and figuring out what that means, I guess, right? And how to communicate effectively. This is also the house of siblings. So there may be something about their relationship with their siblings that is a very important focal point in their life. Because this is also the house of like the student and our local environment. We can look at maybe like a journey around education and learning, as well as like, are we living in kind of like the correct environment that feels conducive to safety, stability, people understanding you, things like that. Now, in the fourth house, I feel bad whenever I see somebody that has Pluto in the fourth house, I guess, like just to be real, because the fourth house is our family, right? It's our foundations, our roots. It is yet another angle, just like the first house in the chart. So anytime you see Pluto on any of the 4 angles, which is first, fourth, 7th, or 10th, that's a very kind of like prominently placed Pluto where we can really like feel the effects of Pluto all the time. And so, you know, this is, yes, family, foundation, the mom, right? All kinds of things like that. And so usually there's a deep-rooted family wound in this house. It could be that they grew up in a situation that was abusive, toxic, unstable in some way. You know, they certainly were not getting their needs met, sort of no matter what the environment was that they grew up in. And they maybe also don't really feel like they fit in with their family in that sense, in some way. And so ultimately, these people are really on the hunt for this idea of family. Usually what we end up seeing with people that have Pluto in the fourth house is when they become adults and like we get to choose who we define as family as adults. It's more about, is it like your friends that are your family? Or, you know, you get married or you're in some sort of committed long-term situation with a partner and y'all have a family, right? And that's where that kind of like sense of empowerment can come in like a real tangible way, where it's like, I have found the partner that meets my needs, right? And like we've had our children and like whatever, you just find like that more supportive, healthier, sort of stable situation in adulthood with Pluto in the fourth house. I do think there's something about becoming a parent that is relevant both for people with Pluto in the fourth and or Pluto in the fifth, which is the house of children, right? Which can become a very empowering and healing avenue for them, if that makes sense. So now Pluto in the fifth house. This is sort of similar to Pluto in the first house in the sense that the fifth house is our individuality, right? It's our creative self-expression. We also look at themes of like fun, joy, play, romance, kids, and the present moment in the fifth house. So there's sort of like a lot that goes on there. Certainly, we are looking for empowerment kind of in that like creative self-expression arena. Now, when we talk about creativity through the lens of astrology, does it mean you're going to become the next Michelangelo? Probably not. Maybe, right? Maybe, but not necessarily. Okay. I do think that having some kind of like creative hobby or outlet is important for these people. But like we make creative choices every day, right? From like the way we dress and wear our hair and do our makeup and our nails or not. Like those are all creative choices. Sometimes it's more about our creative perspective that we have more than anything else. And there's just something about figuring out how to express themselves and who they are that's very important. I think a huge lesson for Pluto in the fifth house is that not everything is that deep. And I like people with their Pluto in the fifth house hear that and they're like, that's just not true, right? Like everything is that deep. And it's like, well, no, it's not. Like sometimes we just do things because they're fun, because we want to, right? And it doesn't actually like, and that's merit enough. It doesn't always have to have this like deep transcendental, meaning behind it. Certainly, these people have to learn how to be kind of more grounded in the present moment in their bodies and not maybe having like all this existential anxiety about like the future, for example. And inner child work is very, very important in this house. Again, this can kind of be like somebody that maybe had it a little rough in their childhood growing up. And there's just something about the inner child and or like actual children that becomes very important here. it is like the house of romance in the sense that we can see like flings and like hookups here. That to me, that's almost like a secondary or like tertiary theme of this house. And like the other things usually end up taking more precedence. Okay. So now here we are in the 6th house where your Pluto lives. And yes, it becomes very important to find our routines, our rituals, and again, kind of figuring out what is the situation in your daily life that feels empowering to you. I don't know if people will find this boring. I find it necessary, okay? But like there's something about the mundane, right? And the things that we're doing and like our everyday daily life that's actually really important. It is the house where maybe we're like figuring out how to adult a little bit and like we're taking care of all of the little tasks in our daily life that enable us to like find that sense of stability to like go out into the world and do the things that we need to do. It is also the house of our physical health. So I don't know if you want to talk about this at all or divulge anything, but very often when I see Pluto in the 6th house, I'm like, hello, are you dealing with any chronic health issues?
I think I have been dealing with that more so in that I just like work a lot. And I think that really does affect my health. And it totally affects my health in terms of like stress, anxiety, just feeling like achiness, gaining weight, things like that. And I just feel like I'm coming into terms with finding the magic in my everyday life so that I can use this moment to transform myself. And I think that is something that's really powerful about Pluto as well when you're talking about extremes, because I find that I can go into the extremes of like going on a cleanse, and going on a cleanse is not like, super, super extreme, but like I can just find myself being very like, I think black and white about my routines or like my rituals and like, well, it has to be this way for it to count. And so I can be really hard on myself with these like everyday things that I try to do. And so lately I've been offering myself more grace in that it doesn't need to be perfect. As long as I'm feeling better, then it counts.
Yes. Okay. I love that. This is like the perfect real life example of like Pluto in action. I love what you said about the black and white thinking because that is so Pluto with those extremes. It's like it's all or nothing. And I think as we go through this process of engaging with Pluto kind of across our lifetime, we learn that life is actually happening in like the in between, right? And these like varying shades of gray. And it doesn't have to be so like it's either this and it's all this or it's nothing, right? It's like, no, sometimes it can be a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And like, that is really where real life happens. And so we're kind of constantly searching to figure out like where on that spectrum we kind of want to sit and what feels good and empowering to us. And yes, like an example of going on like an extreme diet or an extreme cleanse. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched like Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, where the guy like only does juice for like months and months on end. And like, that would be like an extreme health thing, right? But yeah, like I think just figuring out what feels supportive to you and your physical health is really important in this house. It is also the house of like your job. So there can be something about like, do you love your job, right? Like, does it feel, again, supportive to kind of this daily situation that you're looking for? We can search for empowerment kind of in like the job and the career in that sense too. It is yet another money house, right? So we're going to have this idea of like the resources and the materials and things that we need really coming forward here as well.
I feel like, I do love what I do, but there can be moments where I don't love the mundane stuff, obviously. Like, I find that really difficult and almost like, why do I need to do this? And I feel like when I was working more in like a job setting, I would have these kind of like power struggles with different authority figures. And I feel like that was how Pluto was really playing out in that house.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, it led me to ultimately have my own business because I was like, wow, I really can't work for people. But I think part of that too is just like stepping up and becoming your own authority.
Totally. This is something that is also something we see with Pluto in the 10th house, which maybe we'll touch on that again once I get up there. But yes, like authority, struggles with authority, having power struggles in the workplace. Such a like 6th house, 10th house, like Pluto thing. And yes, we usually do end up kind of working for ourselves. Anytime there's like a Mars-y type influence, right? Like Scorpio being traditionally ruled by Mars, we can absolutely see people who work for themselves more than anything else, which I think it's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But yes, power struggles in the workplace are real with that placement.
Definitely nothing wrong with that. But I also find that with how I relate to this placement is like, I can absolutely be obsessive with my work. It can be like all I want to do all day, every day. And I think sometimes I don't know what the boundaries are, even for myself. So for anyone out there who's experiencing this, you're not alone.
Yeah, so that's part of our journey is finding our boundaries and our limit with Pluto. So I love that actually. Okay, so now we move into the top hemisphere, right, of the chart where we start looking at Pluto in the 7th house. So this is the house of the other. This is where we're going to look at marriage, committed partnerships. It is where we look at more like one-on-one relationships than anything else, which like, yes, of course, I'm speaking about like romantic relationships, but it can also be like any of your one-on-one relationships that you have. So like a close friendship, for example, could fall into the 7th house. It's also where we see business partnerships. Right. So like this kind of vibe where we're recording this podcast together is like a business partnership in the 7th house. Right. Or like reader versus client would be very like 7th house business partnerships as well. I think no matter what it is that you do, especially if you are a business owner, like inevitably there are business partnerships that we have to deal with. Anyways, people that have their 7th house, their Pluto in the 7th house, they can be very intense in these relationships, right? Like this would be very similar to having your Venus in Scorpio, for example. It can be somebody who honestly kind of like goes through a lot in their romantic life. We're looking to sort of like merge our souls together where we have Pluto in the 7th house because again, we have this sort of like obsessive, extreme nature. This is somebody who's very passionate, certainly in their relationships, but it's also somebody who has probably like kind of gone through it, right? Like obviously we have all experienced heartbreak and certain things in relationships that didn't feel great, but this is like a marker of somebody who has maybe experienced like abusive relationships. Are we in relationships with maybe like addicts? Are we an addict? We can become addicted to love, certainly with this placement. It could be like, oh, we were cheated on. It's hard. We got our heart broken really, really hard in usually like pretty extreme toxic type situations. Certainly like relationships become the catalyst for transformation here. And we're looking for empowerment in this arena. So the journey here is truly to figure out what a healthy relationship means, right? What does it look like and feel like and act like and move like? Boundaries as like a very strong keyword here as well with other people. And we're sort of looking to figure out like equality and fairness and just relationships, stuff like that.
I will say that I dated somebody who has their natal Pluto in their 7th house, and they were really intense.
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of feel like these toxic things they might have experienced, they like also exhibit as part of the way that they know how to show love. Like that's their love language.
Absolutely. Yes. They can become perpetrators of those qualities as well. I think the hard part where we will see Pluto in the 7th house is it can almost become this like self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Where they're like, oh, I'm going to be too much for this person. I'm going to end up again in this kind of like toxic, abusive cycle with somebody. I'll drive them away with my like obsessive personality. Like whatever, right? And then again, like because they are exhibiting those behaviors, it becomes that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. So there's a need to probably go to therapy, okay? And to like try to work it out. And of course, like so important to have this self-awareness around like their own behaviors that they are bringing to the table as well.
Totally. I feel like I'm pretty intuitive, so I kind of sense that some of this is just self-sabotage.
It can be. I think Pluto in general, maybe no matter where it's sitting in the chart, we can have like some self-sabotagey things. And that's part of shadow work, right? Is like acknowledging these parts of yourself that maybe aren't ideal and needing to like acknowledge that that exists, because until we can do that, there's no way to like integrate it. There's no way to work with it. There's no way to change it, right? So absolutely, we have to kind of have that like, oopsies. I am also guilty of this conversation. No, I love that. I love that we're bringing forward these truths about Pluto and the way that we embody our Pluto as well.
It's very real.
It is. Oh, I like it. I'm super curious about your chart now that we're having this conversation. I'm like, okay, Grace, what's your big three?
I'll definitely show it to you. Well, I'm an Aries sun, Pisces moon, and Gemini rising.
Oh, interesting. Where is your Mercury?
11th house in Aries.
Okay, that's your chart ruler.
So conjunct my sun.
Oh, we love a Mercury Kazemi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, perfect that here we are doing this podcast and that, you know, you write and are published and all of that's very Mercurial of you.
Oh, yeah.
So interesting. Okay, I love it.
We're going to get to your big three towards the end of this interview, too. So.
Okay. Well, I just want to say I love an Aries. Love an Aries with all my heart. Okay, so in the 8th house, you may think of this in some ways as like Pluto being at home, right? Because it's this very like traditionally Scorpio's house type situation, right? So the 8th house, Pluto in the 8th house is just interesting because we're already going through the cycles of like life, death, rebirth, transformation, healing in general, the 8th house. That's what we're doing there. And so Pluto just sort of like amps all of that up. It's like, yeah, let's just keep going through even more like transformation. I will say, in my own opinion, I think there's a big journey around sex. Okay, when we're looking at Pluto in the 8th house, purely because it is the house of sex, right? And Pluto / Scorpio rules over the genitals. So for realsies. So when I see somebody with Pluto in the 8th house, I'm like, hello, do you feel empowered in your sexuality? And they're usually like, no. That is a whole journey in and of itself, regardless of like Pluto being in the 8th house or not. But I think there really is something there, right? Figuring out how to be not only in touch with your sexual energy, to feel comfortable with it, to have that kind of reflection of like, well, what does being empowered in my sexual energy really mean to me? Unfortunately, we can see people with sexual trauma a lot with this placement as well. This is also true for Pluto in the 2nd house. So there's just kind of something there. We also look at shared resources in the 8th house. So this can be like, if you live with somebody, you share your resources with them, right? And some people would refer to the 8th house as like your partner's money, quote unquote. I don't know if I love that definition, but I think it's a good example to use to help people understand what we mean by shared resources. So again, we are maybe looking at like, do we have good boundaries with our partner and money, right? Like, are we being controlled by money?
That relate to like a conservatorship or something?
Yes. Brittany. Where's Brittany? Okay. Like for real? Maybe, right? At least she's a Libra rising, so she probably has Pluto in her 2nd house. I'm just saying. And that's a great example of being controlled through resources, right? So yes, this is something where money and things like that can get super weird. I think we can also see somebody who maybe financially supports their partner, and there again just isn't this kind of like balance or boundaries or necessary things surrounding like shared resources. Certainly we can end up making a lot of money and like a very nice, appropriate business partnership with Pluto in the 8th house, but it may take us a while to get there. Because it is the house of the occult, this can also be somebody who is very like spiritual, very attracted to those things. Perhaps they have like a very strong intuition. There's like that kind of piercing energy that comes along with like 8th house, Pluto, Scorpio type things, where they can kind of cut through all the fluff and BS and kind of see somebody or a situation like straight through to the heart. Now, Pluto in the ninth house is an interesting placement because the ninth house wants to be like fun and adventurous and like we're traveling and we're, experiencing higher education and doing all of these things. And then Pluto comes through and is like, are we having a good time? Right? Like, are we experiencing adventure and being able to strike out into the world and have the experiences that we're really looking to have? That's the ninth house in a nutshell to me. Down in the third house, we're looking at kind of like our local environment, whereas up in the ninth house, we're looking at like the entire world. And where we look at like traditional learning through reading and writing and whatever in the third house, the ninth house is learning through experience. So are you having the experiences that you want to have? Certainly going the higher education route would be like an empowering thing here, or any type of kind of like supplemental learning that we do in our adult lives. But education in general as like a very empowering avenue for somebody here. There could be something about stepping into the teacher role as it is the house of the teacher that could be very empowering, and travel, I think, is something that's like deeply important here. We're ultimately looking to establish our truth with a capital T, right? What is your philosophy and what do you really believe in with Pluto in the ninth house? Okay. Pluto in the 10th house. This is the career, okay? But it's like our calling in life. It's not like, oh, my job at 7-Eleven, unless that's really what checks your box, okay? But it's like, I'm bringing water to the children or whatever it is, okay? So we're really looking to figure out, like, what do we want to be when we grow up with Pluto in the 10th house? And it can be a journey, of course. These people constantly trying to figure out whatever that means. Yes, we can see struggles with authority and power here in the 10th house as well. If you've had like an abusive situation with a boss in the past, for example, this could be very like Pluto in the 10th house. Maybe you do end up doing better working for yourself. But I think beyond that, it's really this idea of like, what is the legacy that I'm building? How are people going to know me? What are they going to know me by or know me for? And what am I sort of like leaving in my wake here in the 10th house? Because it's Pluto, this could be somebody who works in like a taboo, quote unquote, like job, right? Like, is this sex work? Is this, again, like spirituality, the occult, right? We're like making money, or our legacy is very like scorpionic and Plutonian in some way. I think that would make a lot of sense.
I was thinking funeral homes when you were talking.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yes. Are we a death doula? Do we work in funerary practices or any, like, yes, that's perfect. Love that. Good one, Grace. That was a good one. Okay, in the 11th house now. This is the house of the group. So it's all of our social circles, okay? So friends, family, lovers, neighbors, coworkers. It's the people that we interact with on like a daily basis, or at least a regular basis. It is the house of the future. It's the house of technology, social media, and the house of dreams. And I don't mean like our sleeping dreams when I say that. I mean like our ambitions and wild, crazy visions that we have for ourselves that we would like in our life. So unfortunately, this can be like kind of more relationship karma here, where it's like, who is my group? Where is my group? Do they love me? Do I feel good in my relationships with other people? I think there can be like a certain loneliness that manifests for people with Pluto in the 11th house, where they can really struggle to make the connections with other people that they're looking for. My advice for people with their Pluto in the 11th house is to find a group, rally, cause that they want to throw themselves into and to kind of act in service to or in service of. It helps them to establish the group, to find the group, to be appreciated by the group, which is really hard with Pluto in the 11th house. There's no need to have like inauthentic connections, and people need to like shed that weirdness that they have. Yeah. There is also something, of course, about like working with technology or social media or something that could feel very empowering to them in some way as well. And we probably need to learn how to plan for the future. Okay. Pluto in the 11th house. And finally now we arrive at Pluto in the 12th house. So the 12th house in general is just like a very interesting place in the chart because it is the only house that never sees the light of day from the sun. And so it's sort of hidden behind this curtain of obscurity, and we have to sort of work extra hard to engage with anything that's in the 12th house, because this is where we tend to like repress and bury things, and we're like not looking at the things that are in the 12th house, not understanding them perhaps. Like things in the 12th house can feel very like elusive to us. Certainly this is also like the house of spirituality, dreams, the subconscious mind. It's a house of karma, both like favorable and unfavorable, because we garner both. And it is where we look at like hospitals, prisons, mental health facilities, any of those type of faculties where we go and we cannot necessarily like leave or move about of our own volition. So Pluto in the 12th house. First of all, I would expect this to be somebody who's a vivid dreamer. Are we having like straight up prophetic dreams? I don't know. Certainly there can be something about needing to, once again, kind of like get in touch with our spirituality. Like, what do we know? Maybe you have weird past life recollection here. I don't really know. But there's something about empowering yourself in your spirituality, your spiritual gifts, your intuition, all of that. And you need to have alone time. Okay. Like there's something about downtime that's like really important here, but we also have to be careful not to isolate. So it can be a delicate balance that way. Again, there could be something about like working in hospitals, prisons, things like that become like empowering in some way, where we're really like helping people who are in isolation.
Hey, have you downloaded the Mystic Mondays app yet? Well, if you haven't, what are you waiting for? If you want to take the Mystic Mondays tarot and oracle cards with you wherever you go for your daily rituals, this is the app for you. Whether you're on the go, happen to be traveling, and don't have a physical deck with you, no worries, because we've got you covered with the Mystic Mondays app. Check it out. It's available to download on iOS and Android devices inside the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. Now, back to the episode. Where is your Pluto and how do you resonate with that?
Do you want to guess?
I want to say 8th for some reason.
No, it is in the 2nd house. It is conjunct my Venus in Scorpio. So I do have like weird 8th housey things, I guess, that I'm probably doing with Pluto there. But I will say, I'll give you an example of my Pluto in the 2nd house. So we talk about people who have dealt with poverty and struggling to really sort of like establish and empower themselves by way of like material financial security and stability. I went through a period in my life where I was homeless. And if that is not the most like Pluto in the 2nd house, like, oops, I'm on the extreme end of the spectrum where I have no money, no place to live, nothing. Like that's very Plutonian, very Pluto in the 2nd house. And I will in some ways like forever and always be on a journey of trying to find the empowerment and establishing like the financial stability for myself that feels appropriate, right? That feels like I have gotten what I need, and a need again to sort of trust in my own resourcefulness and my own ability to handle whatever the thing is. And there were a lot of things that transpired during that period of my life when I was homeless that forced me to grapple with those things.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. That is truly a transformative way, because 2nd house is so much about resources. And I feel like that there's that, I suppose, the contrast between the 2nd and 8th house and how it reflects each other.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, totally. Well, I don't know if you believe this in your own practice, I guess. I always think of the houses as like mirrors, right? The axis that you're working on with both of those houses.
Totally. Yeah. So I know in your guidebook, you also mentioned past lives, and you kind of touched upon it in the 12th house. And I was wondering, has past lives been a part of your Plutonian journey? And if so, like, how do you use it? How do you heal from it? How do you access it?
So past lives is definitely an area of extreme interest to me.
Same. I went to past life regression training and had like a really crazy experience.
Really? Oh my God, I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So I basically had a past life experience where my mother murdered me. And
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I'm still processing it, but she wasn't my mother in that lifetime. But it's just really interesting how people are karmically linked and how we come back together. And I just feel like there's just so many lessons and also learning and healing for myself.
Do you have your moon in the 12th house?
Moon in 10th house.
Oh, oh yeah, because your moon is in Pisces. Okay. For some reason, I had it in my brain that it was in Taurus. Huh. That's really intense.
It was. It was.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, see, that's so interesting. I feel like I'm constantly on the hunt to actually like find somebody who is really good at like past life regression stuff because I want to have a reading like that for myself. I mean, I'm so curious what would come up.
Well, I am trained in it now.
Okay, well, I will be coming to you for a reading, so that's fine. I'll be scheduling that once this is over. So that's so interesting. So yeah, it's definitely an area that's very interesting to me. And like, as far as my approach to Pluto in particular in my practice, I believe that Pluto points to a past life wound, right? It's like this baggage that we're kind of carrying across many lifetimes. And so what I always tell people is like, because I don't know their experience or their life, okay? And so I'm like, whatever the situation was in a past life was kind of so dire to the point where you were completely disempowered in this arena. And here you are in this lifetime, and we're kind of perpetuating that cycle, or we're perpetuating that pattern. But the call is to tap into the other side of Pluto, right? So not the destructive side, but the creative, transformative, healing side, to flip the script on that and to find a way to become empowered instead in this lifetime, which feels like a tall order, perhaps. And it might be. Okay. But I think for me, I feel like the past life thing is so relevant with Pluto because every time that we like circle back to the thing, right? The theme of wherever your Pluto is sitting, your soul is like, I'm so tired of doing this, right? Like I don't want to do this anymore. And ideally that becomes like the impetus that drives change.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It's like when, for example, in one of the houses, I think ninth, right? When something unexpected happens, which I feel like is like more Uranus energy, but like if you're like comfortable in a situation and then all of a sudden something happens and it feels like out of nowhere, catastrophic rug being pulled out from under you, I often feel like it's a lesson that just needed to happen, you know? So for example, there happened to be mice in my studio. So an exterminator came by and he accidentally knocked over my huge archway mirror, which shattered all over this rug that I meant to like set up for recording purposes. And I was like procrastinating on doing that for a while. So for me, I was just like, well, maybe that happened so that I actually like pay attention to that area. Because sometimes we don't like pay attention to things if for some reason that thing is not calling for our attention. So these catastrophic things may not be catastrophic at all. So like, for example, like if you get pulled over, you know, on the highway, like perhaps you're avoiding an accident or, you know, something like that. I think there are a lot of blessings that can be, you know, seen or unseen until we, you know, have the time to reflect on them. So that past life regression that I shared, I mean, it was only unveiled to me about like a month or so ago. So it's pretty new still. And I feel like for me, yes, it has been intense, but at the same time has brought a lot of like awareness to myself and my, I think, relationship between us. By the way, like, it's not like she's like a terrible person or whatever. There are different like circumstances playing out. But I feel like for anyone else that might, you know, have these like things they can't explain, I feel like past life regression is a really great way to explore that because you might know in your subconscious, in the spiritual realm. You might be getting, signals and signs, but if you're not necessarily aware of it, you might find other ways to try to explain away things that can't be explained. So even if I'm saying this to somebody that like doesn't believe in past life regression and might just be like, well, what if you're just like making it up? My answer to that is just like, if you feel like this information is helping you heal and better your life in some way, then why not believe in its power to heal yourself? If it's not harming somebody, and if it's ultimately here to give you a sense of empowerment, which is like such a theme of Pluto, because the point is sometimes, whether in this lifetime or in past lifetimes, we've experienced both sides of the spectrum. So I've heard this saying, I don't know exactly who has said it or where it comes from, but basically, as many times as you've been the victim, you've also been the perpetrator. And I do remember sitting like in a ayahuasca circle and the shaman saying something along those lines. And then someone else at that training, when I had shared, the experience that came up for me, also told me that again. And so I was just like, I don't know what I've done in past lives. And I think that's part of embracing the shadow side of who you are as like a human being or a spiritual being. And you've had different lessons in different lifetimes. So we all have this like lightness and dark within us. And it's also about like embodying, but also I feel like embracing. And I think that's part of the empowerment that comes with, understanding the shadow side of what is coming up for you and not necessarily identifying with it as like who you are, but more so of like how you can use that information to transform yourself into a version of yourself that you really love.
I am eating this up because I could not agree with everything that you said more. Like, you put it so beautifully, and I completely agree with you. And like, to me, the process of like shadow work isn't about eradication as much as it is like integration, right? And when we're speaking about this idea of like transforming something, it is to transform this thing into something that feels good, right? Something that feels beautiful or useful or whatever the adjective is that you want to slap on there, that again is empowering to you. But inevitably, there will be things about ourselves that aren't all great or all perfect or whatever. It's just part of being human. And I think too, it's interesting when you bring in the idea of past lives, because we don't know, obviously, everything that has transpired in our past lives. And we've probably done and said and been all kinds of things.
So true. And I think like honoring all aspects of how your soul wants to express yourself, because there's just so many ways that we can play out these roles, whatever lessons we were meant to learn in those lifetimes that we bring with us to our current timelines. Like, for example, I fully feel and receive the information that like the things that I make with Mystic Mondays, part of the information I got from past lifetimes. And now I'm like expressing that through the knowledge that I've gained from those past lifetimes into this lifetime. So I'm sure some specific natural talents that you might have, you're like, oh my God, I'm like really good at this and I don't know why. That could be something from a past life.
No, I totally agree with that. And like, specifically when we're looking at like Pluto in the birth chart, Pluto is also this like secret superpower that we possess, right? So it's just kind of like waiting to be unlocked, right? It's waiting for us to like acknowledge that it's there. And I think that that's also like a part of the Plutonian journey that doesn't get talked about as much. Like, we're always like transformation, shadow work, cycles of life, death, rebirth, like whatever. And it's like, okay, but also like part of this empowerment is understanding and like embracing, acknowledging that superpower that you possess and figuring out how to like harness that too.
Yeah, I love that. So, what are some of your favorite rituals? I know we talked about Pluto a lot, but do you work with other energies? And, what do you like to do?
So Venus is my chart ruler. Okay. That's my girly. And so I do a lot of Venus work, certainly. And of course for me, because they're conjunct, I'm like Venus and Pluto, their journey is intertwined for me. Right. And so hence the deck. Right. But also hence a lot of the work that I do in my own life. For me, I love annual perfections as an astrological timing technique. Do you use perfections?
I have before, yeah.
Okay. So I like it because for each year of your life, you end up with a different Time Lord, right? So there's a different planetary energy that comes forward and is very prominent for that year of your life. And so in my own life, I very intentionally work with the energy of that planet and sort of end up designing, sort of my week or my weekly ritual or whatever around that planet and what it's doing. So for example, in this year of my life, I have been going through a lunar year. And so Mondays, Mystic Mondays, being ruled by the moon, Mondays have become this sort of all important day for me where I do a lot of lunar focused things. And at the end of this month, I will have a birthday and I will enter a solar year. And so that will sort of change over to Sundays, and the type of work and things that I sort of engage in and do will be very solar focused instead.
Cool. So what's your sun, moon, and rising?
Do you want to take a guess?
Ooh, well, Virgo, is that right? Virgo sun. Oh, geez.
It's okay.
Libra,
yes, Libra. Virgo is my Mercury, if it makes you feel better. But
okay.
I am a triple Libra.
Wow. I feel like that's rare.
It is. There is only 2 hours in each zodiacal season where a person can end up being a triple sign. So yes, I am. Well, if you're ready, I am Sun, Moon, Rising, Mars, and Lilith, all in Libra.
In which house?
All in the first house.
Oh, wow.
My moon is in the 12th house, okay? But everything else is in the first house.
Wow. Well, Libra is such a lovely sign, I feel like. But do you find that that's an overdose of Libra?
Well, I'm always I'm a fake Libra kind of, because yes, I have all these Libra placements, but they're all Venus ruled placements, right? So then you think about my Venus and Scorpio, conjunct Pluto, just ruling over half of my dang chart. And like I said, my Mars is conjunct to my sun. I have a Mars Kazemi in my chart, which gives this kind of more fiery punch than you would normally experience with both, I would say, a Libra sun and a Libra Mars. I don't know. In some ways, I'm I am so Libra, the most Libra of all the Libras. And in other ways, I'm I don't know. I don't know if I'm really that Libra, but certainly I'm searching for balance in all things. So, yeah.
Aren't we all? Libra or not.
Right.
So, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Care less about what other people think.
That's a good one. And we can wrap this conversation up with a collective pull from the Oracle of Pluto. These beautiful cards.
Yeah, Rose, who illustrated the deck, is insane. She's so talented. She's one of those people who, I see the things that she comes up with, and I'm where did you pull that from? Where did that come from? So she's a Pisces. She's a Leo rising, Capricorn moon. But yeah, she absolutely killed it with this deck. It is beautiful because of her, I will say.
Super gorgeous.
Okay, interesting. So the card that we have pulled here for the collective is the crab. So not quite the same as the hermit crab. Okay.
Which is what I pulled this morning.
right? But there are some similarities, right? So where we're looking with the crab in this deck, we are still looking at this idea of like boundaries, where the hermit crab is like, I need to like have introspection and introversion and alone time and solitude, blah, blah, blah. The crab is really about teaching other people how to treat us, which I think is a huge lesson in general for everybody, especially if you're somebody who is like walking the spiritual path in any way. We all kind of tend to be a little sensitive and sensitive to others, and boundaries are hard, and they're something that needs to be actively practiced and engaged with in perpetuity. So that's really the vibe of this card, is teaching other people how to treat us. And certainly it's the duality, I will say, both of treat others how you want to be treated, but we also teach other people how to treat us by what we will put up with and what we will tolerate. And we sort of implicitly let other people know how much we value ourselves and what is appropriate by the types of behaviors that we will put up with from other people.
Yeah. Wow. Love that. Because I feel like what comes up is like, how can we expect other people to treat us well if we're not treating ourselves well? And we can be the example, to show people what's okay and what's not okay.
No, I totally agree with that. And, part of the crab as well as this idea of like self-protection, if you think of like Cancer, for example, or Scorpio for that matter, they're both very like self-protective signs. Their gut instinct is to protect themselves and their soft, squishy body inside, right, before they let anybody else in, or they make sure that it is safe to do so. We tell people a lot about the way that we feel about ourselves that way. But I think there's also with this card a need to discern when it is time to open up and when it is time to kind of like withdraw into that protective shell as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because sometimes there just needs to be time to integrate yourself, before sharing. By the way, I've done a lot of integration for the information I divulged today, so I felt ready to share. But I feel like, some things are just meant to be yours, and I think that is a form of power in itself, of just like knowing your truth without needing anybody else to validate it. Because sometimes that information in the wrong hands just like is not serving you.
Totally. I completely agree with that. And I think it is important to be able to discern that too. That was like for me and my own journey with boundaries and like teaching other people how to treat me. That is a huge lesson that I had to learn. It's like sometimes we do keep things close to the chest because that's where they belong.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Aubrey, this was wonderful. I feel like I learned so much about Pluto and love your energy and explaining everything. So thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on here and allowing me the space to speak about my deck and Pluto in general. I love your energy too. Actually, this was really nice. I liked it a lot. So thank you.
A fine balance between Libra and Aries.
That's right. We're out here balancing one another.
Hey. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
So much for tuning in to today's episode with Aubrey Houdeshell. Pluto is such a powerful planet to work with, and I'm so glad Aubrey was able to share with us the transformative ways we can work with Pluto and how Pluto can show up in our lives. Where is Pluto in your astrology natal chart? And how has Pluto showed up for you? Leave a comment on this YouTube video, Spotify, wherever, and let us and the community know. Because you never know who else is out there experiencing the same things as you. And as a reminder, we will be doing a giveaway of the Oracle of Pluto on Instagram. You can check out this deck unboxing on the Mystic Mondays YouTube channel. Until next time, my dear mystics, if you are going through a transformation, you got this. You'll come out on the other side with more wisdom and power than you can imagine. Sending you so much grace today and every day. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember to subscribe and check out more Graced podcast episodes for how to apply everyday magic to your everyday life. See you next time.